ladies and gentlemen, it's our pleasure to welcome you to Wellington. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened until the seatbelt sign has been switched off. Today we'll disembark using the forward door. If you can do so without unfastening your seatbelt, you will now switch your mobile phone off flight mode. All other electronic devices will need to remain switched off until inside the terminal. Do take care when you're opening the overhead lockers, just in case any items inside have moved during the flight. And please check to have all your personal items with you before leaving the aircraft. If you have checked your luggage on board this flight, you can collect your luggage from the baggage claim after disembarking. If you have a connecting jet or a Qantas flight, please see airport staff for information about the transfer of your luggage and your onward journey. On behalf of our captain, Kwan Wai Chan, and the onboard team today, I'd like to thank you for choosing the flight Jetstar, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Here we are, just ridden up from Wellington, down Taupo, well, pretty much Taupo waterfront anyway. Desert road was terrible, the road's not in good condition, it was lots and lots of tar bleed, very extremely slippery because it was wet, and it was windy, like I was having to lean into the wind to keep my bike in a straight line. It was just ridiculous. Mind you, there was a weather warning in place for wind and everything else. But yeah, sadly some of the roads that I've come across are just, you know, I've got brand new tyre on the front of here and it's still a bit slippery, and the wet combined with the tar bleed and everything else just hasn't made for, you know, any sort of spirited riding at all, which is a bit of a shame because I would have liked to, you know, to go through the desert road at a reasonable pace instead of having to sort of crawl along, which is pretty much what I end up having to do. Lost my front end in a corner, not completely, but it was a bit of a wake up. It wasn't really cranked in. It was just the tar and the wetness and the tyre and everything else, and it just let go for a second. One of those moments where your heart goes, oh man, shit. Anyway. Otherwise the road's been pretty good, you know. It's didn't encounter any rain really until I got to pretty much when I pretty much got to the beginning of the desert road, or just into the desert road. That's when the rain started, or around Wairuru actually was when the rain started. But it wasn't too bad. It wasn't completely bucketing, you know. It was more like a hail kind of rain. It was freezing. My hands were like so cold up there. But overall a pretty good ride. Not too uncomfortable considering I'm doing the thing on a sports bike. To get off the gas stations and have a bit of a wander around, I stretched myself out because I've got a bag with a whole heap of stuff on my back, and that's not the most, not the best of things to want to have on your back. Anyway, it's quite beautiful once you get around here, so the road's a little bit dry, which is good. A lot of cops up around Wairuru, the desert road, but I guess that's kind of normal up around there. I've been quite lucky today actually, because normally around the waterfront here, this is where you always get stuck behind everyone, and today, yeah, there was really no cars at all. Normally I'm in my van or in my car and I'd be caught behind grandma doing 40 kilometres an hour everywhere, not willing to move into the slow bays. But not today. Today's been good. My fuel's been pretty conservative as well, haven't used too much. Yeah, the wind today is quite nasty. Feel it up here in these exposed places, it's just kind of pushing the bike around a little bit. Not real bad. I mean, Wellington can be pretty bad, so kind of get used to that, but enough that it's noticeable. There we go. Radar detector's going off. What does that look like up ahead? We know exactly what that is. Yeah. Sure enough. Yeah, well, I got that in plenty of time, and that was a VW van too, not even the ordinary kind of van that you expect to see one in. I picked him up in plenty of time. So for those vans, it definitely works. It's definitely good. Because I mean, when I see vans, I'm always a bit paranoid anyway, but I wouldn't have expected an older VW van like that to have a radar in it, but sure enough, that's what it had. The great thing about being on a bike, I am to follow the Maui camper vans. So good. Just remember my pet hate in the car when you encounter those guys in the twisties. Incredibly annoying. The view from here over Lake Taupo is just always so amazing. Really, if you get the opportunity to ride in, New Zealand, you should really ride past Taupo, or at least to Taupo, because it's a pretty amazing place. I mean, New Zealand in general is a pretty amazing place, but this really is just spectacular. I reckon so far I've had a pretty good run of it, really. I looked at the weather forecast yesterday and it was saying rain, rain, rain and more rain and rain completely up and down the country, well, the North Island anyway. And I've managed to sort of so far ride 3/4 of it without being rained on. Not that I know that up towards Auckland it's supposed to be pretty crappy. Not Taupo, Hamilton apparently I got told is bucketing down this morning, so whether it's still bucketing down when I get there or not I don't know, but it was earlier. In a long time I've had my bike in 6th gear to conserve gas. It's cold up here. We kind of got out of the cold after the desert road. Around Taupo wasn't too bad. Now we're back into it being cold again and wet and miserable. Not much fun. My hands are getting so cold. See, there goes the radar again. I'm sure where the damn gas station is here. Doing pretty good actually on the old gas here. Not using much at all. I guess it's just the consistency of kind of boosting along.
So on the day that I decided to do this ride, unfortunately, there'd been weather warnings in place and there was supposed to be rain right up and down the country. So by the time I got to Tokoroa, I was getting pretty cold and pretty, well, not really tired, but I kind of had enough of riding in the rain. I really was starting to get soaked. The rain was starting to get in and the seams in my wet weather gear, and it was getting quite frustrating.
Get myself a bit of potassium while I'm here as well, in the way of a banana, because that seems like a good idea. So coming into Auckland now, you can always tell when you're in Auckland because the traffic suddenly becomes horrendous. And this is not even bad traffic. Anyway, we're here. It's miserable. It rained pretty much all through Hamilton, booted down, soaked me. It always gets in, it always gets in your wet weathers around your crutch, and your gloves get soaked, of course. So it wasn't the most fun ride. I can think of better rides to have. It certainly wasn't the same as riding in Brisbane, that's for sure. We're basically here, we're basically in the city now. I don't know how many hours it took, we'll have to have a look later. Pretty reasonable, I mean it's probably early afternoon, I would think. I mean, if the trip had actually, if it had been dry all the way up, it would have made a big difference in the trip, do the trip probably so much faster. But that's the nature of riding. So you could leave Wellington and it could be sunny, and you could get halfway up the island and it could be raining. So you never know what's going to happen. You're going to take any sort of half decent trip, you pretty much have to take a set of wet weathers with you just in case. Like other people have said on the forum, you could check the, or on Facebook, you could check the weather forecast. I did check the weather forecast, and I reckon I did pretty well because it was supposed to be raining all over the country, and it wasn't. It really only rained in a couple of places. It rained a little bit on the desert road, but the main problem on the desert road was the wind and the terrible road conditions. Lots of tar bleed. The trucks had just wrecked the road, and because it was wet, it was slippery. That combined with the wind and everything else was just, it was a pretty hairy ride. And the worst bit of riding actually wasn't the desert road. It was actually riding in the rain, because I just dislike riding in the rain. I mean, like a torrential downpour rain in Hamilton, and I rode for about 3/4 of an hour in that kind of rain where it was just booting down continually, and the cars were all doing like 80 k's an hour in a 100 k zone, and I just wanted to get where I wanted to be, and I didn't want to sit around in that weather for too long. But otherwise pretty good. It's been a little bit showery up this way, but so far not too bad. And I'm going over the bridge, so I don't know what it's going to be like on the other side. Maybe it'll be miserable over the other side, I'm not sure. But I can't imagine anything much worse than what I've already done so far, so far so good. Looks like we might be riding back into the crappy weather again. Not much difference now anyway, because it's already wet me as much as I can, so as long as I stay warm I don't really care. So far my gear's been pretty good. I've got thermals on underneath, and the thermals are helping a lot. Just Makes a big difference. I used to live in Auckland about 15 years ago, and it was never like this, the traffic. I mean, it was bad, but it was never this bad. I used to come across to Manukau quite a bit. The traffic on the motor, it was never, well, it wasn't great, but it was, you know, it wasn't at a crawl. And just every time I come to Auckland now, it's just at a crawl, it's just at a standstill. They just haven't sorted the roading at all. Well, I shouldn't say they haven't sorted the roading actually, because they have actually upgraded the motorways, but it's just the sheer volume of people. There's just so many people living here now, and the roads just can't really cope anymore. They weren't built for this kind of huge population explosion that's happened. And the government here just pretty much opened the doors and said, "In you come. Welcome, bring your money. Spend it with us." And the end result is this huge, ridiculous congestion. Interesting to see what it's like as we get over the bridge or close to the bridge, whether it gets better. Maybe it will. This part I think is always kind of notorious for being bad. So considering that I've been soaked and ridden through the rain and through the wind and through the snow pretty much, feel too bad. I feel pretty good. I think just having a good seat makes a huge amount of difference. Oh, tank grip is essential, so you can brace your knees against your tank, take the weight off your wrists. That makes a big difference too.
easily the biggest ride that I've done in a considerable amount of time. It wasn't too bad. I mean, aside from the weather, if the weather had been better, but I didn't have much choice in that respect because I just had to get it done. But if the weather had been better, this actually wouldn't have been too bad a ride at all. The main thing was just the fact that it was wet and that it was cold in certain places, and that sort of just made the job so much more difficult to do. But on a bike like the 750, I didn't, even though it's a sports bike, I actually didn't really get too uncomfortable, and I didn't find the ride overall to be too bad at all. By this stage of the journey, once you get into Auckland, really it's just, it's just traffic. It doesn't matter what time of day you're going out, you're just kind of leaving it out of the traffic and trying to get to where you're going, and that's pretty much what I was doing. I'd already been on my bike for a considerable amount of hours, and I was just kind of looking forward to getting somewhere where I could get dry and get a little bit warmer and relax a little bit, because I'd started fairly early. I got up at about sort of 5 in the morning, got myself ready. And it was just a long day.